Hello and welcome to Behind the Bearcat. This is the podcast where the Northwest Missouri State University Career Services Office chats with Northwest faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends to hear about their career journeys, how they got to where they are, and how they became Bearcats. I'm Northwest Internship Coordinator Travis Klein.
And I am Hannah Christian, the Assistant Director of Career Services. And on our podcast today, a Bearcat alum. She graduated with a degree in secondary science ed. She is the Lead Cytogenetic Technologist at Children's Mercy and is also an alumni board member, correct?
Yes.
All right. The great Damian Bridges. The crowd goes wild. I need a crowd. Okay. Travis, you need to help me with the crowd. I need some special effects.
An applause noise.
Yeah.
All right. So I just have to start because we were, like I said, we were kind of discussing this. What does a cytogenetic technologist do?
Okay. Well, we used to play this game, friends and I. We go to a bar and we try to have people guess what I did, and if they guessed right, they had to say a couple keywords. If they guessed right, we buy them a drink. If they guessed wrong, they buy me a drink, and normally I got the drink. But cyto means cell. And then genetics means, what makes up a person, they get half of their genetic material from mom, half from dad. So in a nutshell, I do clinical chromosome studies. So I study your chromosomes, and we do, the kids from our hospital, cancer patients, from clinics, endocrinology. We do parents who are having problems with getting pregnant, or kids who are born and have something wrong. Say a kid's born and they think maybe it has Down syndrome, we'll culture the blood, see if it has that extra chromosome 21. And then we do a lot of cancer patients outside our hospital from other hospitals. So I look at the chromosomes and we determine, is there a genetic chromosome problem to explain what's wrong with the child or the patient. So everything is clinical. It gives you an answer. It's not research or anything like that. So, so we physically look at your chromosomes to see if there's anything wrong with them.
That is fascinating. So cool.
Yes. That's in a nutshell what cytogenetics means. So.
Oh, very cool. All right. So let's go way, way back.
Okay.
And I always like to ask, what was your very first job? So what did you get paid to do, the very first job when you got paid to do some work?
I was a lifeguard at Sun and Surf swimming pool. It used to be a swimming pool off of Antioch Road here in Kansas City. And that's where I started as a lifeguard. Well, let me say I did babysitting before that, watching little kids and stuff. But my first true job, what I consider was a true job, was a lifeguard.
So were you in high school when you were a lifeguard?
Yes, I was. I was 16 when I started being a lifeguard. So I was a freshman in high school, freshman, sophomore, something like that.
And did you do that work for more than one summer, or how long did you have that job?
Gosh, that's a good question. I had at least for a couple of years. I don't think I was doing it when I graduated high school. But at least for a couple of years I did that. It was a lifeguard. Good question.
And so long ago. How did you get to Northwest?
Well, I came from a family of Bearcats. My mom and dad both went to Northwest, and there really wasn't any question about not going to Northwest. So I wasn't interested in looking at other colleges. I just wanted to be a Bearcat like my mom and dad were. And it's kind of as simple as that.
Did you know that you wanted to be a teacher?
Well, that is not what I intended to do. I wanted to be a forest ranger riding around on a horse in a national park somewhere when I was young. That's what I wanted to do. So my intent when I first went to Northwest was I was going to get a pre-wildlife. They got a wildlife conservation degree up there. And I was going to do that for a couple of years, and I was going to transfer to Missouri and finish off in forestry. And my dad kind of sat me down and said, you know, you're not going to be making a lot of money doing that. You know, it was just kind of one of those things where you just wanted to make sure I was, you know, prepared. And so I went ahead and I'm like an hour short of my wildlife conservation degree, but I did still continue to that. But then I went ahead and got a teaching degree, kind of like a backup, you know, to just in case type of thing. And I did it in general science and biology. And so initially, that's not what I intended to go up there. Both my parents were teachers, and that wasn't really what I intended to do, but that's kind of what I came out with. So there you go.
So had you always been interested in science?
Yeah, I've always been interested in the outdoors. I'm very curious. I just like being in nature. So, you know, forests and hiking and that sort of thing is what I really like to do. I like being outside. I like piddling in my yard and doing stuff. So it was always something, you know, something outdoors was what, you know, when I was young growing up was what I wanted to do.
So fun fact, that was also when I came here, that's how I started out as well. So very similar story. Yeah. I too wanted to do that. So yeah. I guess I switched out of it as well.
So did you teach?
You come realizing that if it's going to sustain you for the rest of your life, I guess that's what I was thinking. But there you go.
So did you teach post-graduation? You said you had a general science teaching certificate. Did you use that for a few years?
I did not. I did send out resumes. I mean, I did apply for some teaching jobs in my first year that I graduated. And funny that no one was hiring, or I couldn't find what I wanted. So I was just doing some substitute teaching, and I worked for a year at JCPenney's selling jewelry. And I had been doing that for 9 years anyway, kind of a part-time job, you know, seasonal type stuff. So I really didn't find anything for that fall to start teaching. So I worked at Penny's for a whole year thinking maybe I can make a career selling jewelry and make money doing it. Well, after 1 year, I realized that wasn't going to, you know, sustain a career for me. So funny thing is I was working at Penny's, and one of the girls I worked with, her daughter was seeing a genetic counselor at the hospital. She had some problems, and she said they were looking for back then we took pictures of the chromosomes through a camera on the microscope, and then we had to go into a dark room, develop the film and all that. They were looking for someone to, you know, develop film and process the film for the department. So I went in and interviewed for that job. And I interviewed with the director, and he goes, well, my God, he goes, you have a degree in, you know, science and stuff. He goes, you're way over qualified for this job. So he hired me as a technologist right then and there. And so I trained for a couple of years in the lab, got familiar with everything, took my test to make me a cytogeneticist and passed that. And that's how I got into cytogenetics. So, I mean, funny thing, you know, having someone that I worked with and just talking to her and kind of going through the back door of trying to do it through, you know, developing a film, and he hired me as a technologist. So that's how my career started.
That's interesting, because one of the things that we're always, especially with students, sharing is talk to the cashier at Hy-Vee, talk to the person, because, you know, maybe your mailman doesn't know someone, but maybe his wife or her husband's cousin or somebody knows somebody. So if you just put it out there in the wide world, you just really don't know who knows who can kind of help you get that job.
It was very, you know, just, I can't think of the word I want to find, but just odd in the way how it happened, you know, just talking to her. But I knew I couldn't make a living selling jewelry. And so I said, what the heck, I have nothing to lose. And genetics was part of, you know, courses I took in college. And Dr. Hart, I loved him. He was my my instructor for that. And so, you know, I thought it's not that far stretch of what I came out with, general biology and science. And it seemed interesting and sounded interesting. And, you know, I like hands-on. I always loved labs, you know, when I was at school, you know, up there at Northwest, hands-on doing things. So, you know, I thought, why not? So
what is it?
32 years later, I'm still doing it.
So what does a typical day like of your work look like?
Well, when I first started out, I was a technologist. I did all the bench work. I learned how to culture bloods, bone marrows, how to drop them onto slides, to get the metaphases, to read them under the scope. Um, you know, General, lab work, being sterile and doing all that and setting things up. Um, and, learning to read chromosomes, it takes a long time to become really good at it and to be able to recognize, the abnormality, because some of them can be very subtle. And so I started out as a technologist doing that bench work for quite a long time. And then it was somewhere, so I started there in November of '88 at Children's, and did move around a little bit. We were in the hospital, then we moved to Old St. Mary's Hospital and converted their morgue into a lab because Children's was growing, and so we kind of got pushed out. We were expendable to, take over other areas. So we were in St. Mary's for 10 years. We weren't supposed to be there that long. Then we came back to the hospital, and then we got kicked out again. About 6 years ago, we were over in Crown Center in one of their buildings. They built us a whole new lab. So moved around a lot doing what I'm doing. But it was around 2000 when I became the lead technologist, and I kind of saw the lab, helped with training the new people came in, reading, other duties, that I took from supervisor, some stuff off her plate, and eventually got out of doing bench work. I became, more hands-on with the techs and teaching them, and because it takes a long time to become a good reader, and some I've seen people come and go pretty quickly. It's just not their cup of tea. You have to have a lot of patience and can be sitting at a scope, looking at a screen and trying to figure out chromosomes. It's like a puzzle to me, and I love puzzles. So, about 2000 is when I became a lead technologist, and so that's kind of the history of how that happened. So
I think so that is really good, because I want to unpack this so I was also I was a botany major. I switched over to being a botany major, so I was very interested in plant anatomy. And so I think one thing that people don't understand about maybe if you're doing lab work or things like that, how important it is to have that sterile technique and to understand microscopes, and that's a whole skill set. So maybe if you're a student and you're in the natural sciences, that lab work and those types of lab skills are something that you kind of take for granted. But I really think the rest of the world has no idea what you're actually doing in there.
It is. Yeah, you do. You have to, be at it, be very careful, not mixing samples, working with one at a time. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and believe me, I've seen it happen. So it's one of those things where you really have to put your mind to what you're doing and focus in on, what you're doing at that point, and not get distracted. And
yes, detail oriented means something in the lab.
I'm very detailed oriented. One thing that I do right now a lot of is I write a lot of fish reports. And when I say fish, we do for us it's in situ hybridization, where we apply fluorescent probes to metaphases and nuclei, and they light up. So fish studies is one of our aspects of our job, and I write a lot of the reports for that and for the chromosomes. And a lot of the directors have me check their reports, because I'm very detail oriented. I'm very, cautious and conscious of, did we put the right sex in, and is the nomenclature correct? So it's very detailed in that, and that's me detail oriented.
Well, it sounds like this position you have now, you're actually using some of the education stuff too. So if you're training and doing that, you're actually, even though you weren't in the classroom, you're still really teaching and training. And
you're right, Travis. I mean, that is correct. I mean, I am teaching, people how to read, things I use to help get me, to where I am now, and passing along tips and things to do, to help make them a better reader. So, so you are correct. I, in a way, have used my education major to some point, just not in the classroom.
So as a supervisor, if you were hiring people for maybe lab tech positions, if I have natural sciences students here, can you talk about what makes a good lab tech, or what types of skills, what types of maybe personality types or habits or types of things make them good at that kind of work?
You know, we've hired a lot of med tech people who are wanting to get out of med tech and just do something different. And they're great because they've already been in a lab situation. They already have, you know, sterile technique, working under hoods and things like that. And then we've hired people who have no idea what cytogenetics mean, you know. You just have to have, be able, a willingness to work with people, have a clear sense of, you know, being detailed and being, you know, conscious about what we're working with. You know, we're working with tissues and bloods and bone marrow. So, you know, for health of yourself and everyone else, you know, being cautious of that, knowing that you can sit down and concentrate and do something without getting up all the time, you know. So we're looking for people who have that sense of, you know, ability to do that stuff. And like I said, you know, med techs are great because they already have some background, or anyone who's had any type of lab background, you know, it helps. But again, like I said, we've taken people, you know, that don't have any sense of lab. A lot of times those people didn't last too long, and it happens, you know. We've had people come in and they may last a year or less, and then they just see this isn't their cup of tea, you know. Even though we try to explain to them what you're going to be doing, it doesn't really sink in, you know. So you know, in our lab, we've got people that have been there. I mean, I've been there probably the longest now, and we got people there that are, you know, 20, 25 years, and I got a guy behind me at 32, which is a Northwest graduate as well. And so there's a lot of longevity in our lab, which we're finding now we need to start hiring younger people, because soon all these older people are going to be retiring, and we got to get people in there that know what they're doing. So, and there's people who do great at it, but they're just moving on to the next bigger thing, you know, which, you know, I think in this day and age happens a lot more. People are always looking for something greener and something better. And, you know, the people that I'm got all this longevity with, you know, back in the early 80s, you know, late 80s, early 90s, there was a more sense of staying together and staying with that job, or staying with the job, I guess, than sometimes today. So, but yeah, I mean, anyone could do it with the right training. But if you already have some sort of lab experience, that helps a lot. So,
fun fact also, so I had a lab partner in organic chemistry, which anyone who's had organic chemistry knows that it's all about colorless, odorless, clear liquids. And so, but you can't mix all the colorless, odorless liquids, or some of them might explode. And so this is why I do not work in a lab. My partner and I, we would lose track of which was which, and then we would just be like, let's just burn it off, because we didn't want to dump it into the wrong bottle. So there's a lot of reasons why I didn't work in a lab for my career. I was really good at pipetting, though. At that micro pipette, I have very steady hands. So, you know.
Do a lot of that in the lab.
So if I have a student who's about to graduate, do you have any advice for career searching, or what I can do to take the next steps? Maybe even specifically if I want to go into a field sort of like yours.
Oh, gosh, you know, it's been so long that I, you know, never had to go look for a job. You know, I kind of stepped into this by accident, more or less. I guess, you know, you have to kind of decide what you want to do, what kind of area you want to do, and then try to find companies or areas that are hiring or are interested in, you know, that sort of work, or need those sort of people. You know, the more you put yourself out there, and, you know, the more you send your resume out, the better, of course, you know, because you just never know. And you may get several choices, you know, then, instead of having just one person call you back. So my advice is, you know, put yourself out there and send to as many, even though maybe you think they may not be doing exactly what you want, you know, listen to them, go see the lab or go see the area, because you just don't know until you get there, you know. So my advice is put as much out there, you know, when you're searching, and just take a chance. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to, you know, say yes to the job, but at least you can kind of get a sense of what is out there and what are they doing, what kind of things are, available, in the science area. A lot of research out there too. Of course, clinical too. I mean, cytogeneticists just don't come, you can't pluck one off the tree, believe me, If we could hire someone who already had experience, that would be awesome, but it's hard to find, experience in our area without having to train someone, because it takes a long time to train. I mean, it takes a lot of effort and in all the different areas. So, but the more you put yourself out there, the more you get to see and then choose from. So I don't know if that quite answers the question. It's so long since I've had to give a resume and go search for a job. So I'm sure it's quite different than it was back then. So, yeah.
And you're involved with the Alumni Association as well. So how did you get involved with them?
Well, it was, so I graduated in December of '84, and like everyone, you go off, you start your career. I got married, and I kind of forgot about Northwest, to be honest, for a while. Then I got divorced, and then my dad got sick, and he passed away in 2003. And it was about that time where, some friends of mine from college kind of reached out. One of them was in the Kansas City chapter, Northwest chapter. And so I started hanging out with her. I went to a meeting. I became I became on the Kansas City chapter and became an avid Northwest footballer. Had season tickets for 17 years. And that's kind of how I got back involved with the university, with friends, with activities. So I've been on the Kansas City chapter since then. And then I loved it and be involved. I love to do work, plan things, help things. I've done a lot of the golf things for Northwest, helping with that, and stuff for the alumni for, when we had Arrowhead and all sorts of stuff. And then it was last year or year and a half ago when Bob approached me and wanted me to submit being on the board and everything. And I thought I figured it was kind of the next natural step to take. So I've been on the board for a year now, though this year has been it started last July, and this year has been kind of, as everyone knows, pretty well messy anyway with COVID. And so we really haven't done a lot. We couldn't meet. We had to do Zoom for our meeting here in September. And so so that's how I got involved, becoming a board member. Was Bob asked me to submit, and then I got elected. As simple as that.
So that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, what does it mean to you to be a Bearcat?
Well, it means so much. It's tattooed on my body. I have a Northwest Bearcat paw tattooed on the outside of my left ankle. So I don't know how more you can be dedicated. I think it's tradition. When I went to Northwest, I loved the campus. I loved the closeness and just the beauty of it. I mean, it's more beautiful today than it was even back when I was going. There's so much newer things and, stuff. And a sense of pride. I tell people I go to Northwest, and everyone knows Northwest. I mean, they've heard of it, the football team, the basketball team. You can't go anywhere with someone saying, "Oh, you're a Bearcat," and they know who that is, and the fact that I'm a second generation of 3 generations who have gone through Northwest, I'm proud of that. And a sense of belonging and camaraderie. I mean, I have some great friends through Northwest, and the activities, and have a great tailgate group for football. Unfortunately, we can't get together this year, but there's next year. But just that connection and that sense of pride. And I mean, I have a Bearcat room that I got all the posters and things, so yeah, I do, bleed green, I guess you could say. So
We'll let you count this year in your number of years of being a season ticket holder. We'll just give you a pass, right? Like COVID year, season ticket holder, you still get to count that year in your list of years.
It was disappointing that we weren't going to get a play this year. and I already had my tickets, and I have my seat I've had for a long time, and then they say, no, we're not going to do it. So it was a letdown, to say the least. But this isn't going to last forever, so I'll be back next year in my seat, rooting them on, tailgating. And the basketball, I felt bad for all the athletes, especially the spring. The boys didn't get to go on and get their second national championship third national championship as they deserved. And, and thinking, well, we were number one in the nation. Should we get it anyway? As it all, played out. But yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, but it will come back next year. So, gotta hope.
All right. Well, one of the things that I've been doing is at the end of our interviews, giving my our interviewee a little bit of space to just share anything that you have on your mind that you might want to put out into the world.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm contemplating. Well, I shouldn't contemplating. I am. I already told the hospital I'm retiring at the end of 2021. I felt like I kind of, that'll be 33 years there, that I kind of hit my end of the road there. I'd done what I did, and I did it well. I'm a good technologist, very conscientious. But now I'm ready to do something different. I just want to experience something different and something fun. I really love animals. I really would like to volunteer more in pet shelters and things like that. And so, I want to devote, the next 5 years, or once I retire, I'll have 5 years, where I just want to, do fun stuff, a part-time job that isn't demanding like what I have now, but fun, but allows me then to have time for volunteering and doing stuff for the community. I mean, I can be a volunteer at the hospital too. There's a lot of things I can do. So, that's something on my horizon here that I'll be doing. I love to travel. I've been to Europe 4 times and been to Prague and Paris, and I just recently went to Ireland. Wonderful. I would love to go back. So I would want to do more traveling, which I'll have to wait till next year for that, of course.
Maybe now's the time when you can ride your horse through the park, right?
If I had one. Though I know some people do have horses. I could do that. But, and go hiking in the national, forest, there's a lot of places in the United States I still haven't been to, so, give myself some time to do that. So yeah, those are some things I'm looking forward to doing here in the next year and 4 months once I retire in that respect, and, open up a new chapter in my life, so, all my nieces are growing up, so the days of going to watch them play and stuff is kind of over, and that took up a lot of my time, as they were growing up. So, but someday they'll have kids of their own, so I'm sure I'll be involved in that. But yeah, that's kind of, I just, people do what you want that makes you happy, life is short when you think about it, and, that's why I kind of want to retire. I could go another 8 years at Children's, but I really don't want to. I want to be able to do some other things that, fun and things I wanted to experience and take time for myself. And, too often you see people wait too long, and then they don't, either get sick or something, or they can't move around well. And so, so
yeah, I think COVID has kind of showed us sometimes that it's good to slow down, and it's good to do a few things that maybe aren't so driven, I guess,
Right. Finding the time for the little things that, we take for granted, or don't think about, and you let life go by too quickly and don't really slow down and smell the roses, more or less. And so, or spending time with family, hanging out. That's one of my favorite things is game night, hanging out with friends and just playing games, and, doesn't have to be anything fancy, just the time spending with friends and family. It's important. So, yeah.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you for being our guest on
Well,
the
thank you.
podcast. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. This was easy. Like I said, I thought, what are you going to ask me? But
We want to keep it easy. We want to keep it nice and light and easy. So,
yeah.
all
well, I
right.
appreciate
Well, that'll do it for another episode of Behind the Bearcat, and we'll talk to you next time. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget to follow on your podcast platform of choice and on YouTube. Also, click the little notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an upload. And you can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and we have a LinkedIn page.